Well, let's cross live now to Los Angeles and speak to Christian Whiton, who's former Deputy Special Envoy for North Korean human rights. We're very grateful for your time here on BBC News this evening. Let's start with talking about human rights, because for 2 decades we've had this rather closed world, and only occasionally we get the merest glimpse of just how harsh life is for the ordinary North Korean.
That's right. It really is terrible. It's a Stalinist state. There are no human rights as such. And also North Korea went through a period of intense famine in the late 1990s, with perhaps 2 million people out of a nation of just 20 million dying in ongoing famine, privation. Any sort of political dissent often is met with intense brutality, either death or life in a prison camp if you try and leave the country, as many people have. If you're caught by the Chinese, you're sent back, repatriated. Best case scenario, you spend a little bit of time in a prison camp, but if you've contacted missionaries or others the regime thinks are undesirable, you may end up being killed. So a brutally repressive Stalinist state.
The succession clearly has been thought through. You have a 27-year-old or 28-year-old, we don't really know. What likelihood of change from what you have just run through for that country?
I'd say very little. Kim Jong Un is an unlikely leader for North Korea. He's 27 or 28, depending on who you ask. He has been an understudy of his father, Kim Jong Il, for a comparatively short amount of time. Only about a year ago is when he first emerged, and he's the youngest of North Korea, of Kim Jong Il's son. So it's very likely instead he will be a ruler in appearance only, but in fact either his uncle as regent or a number of military leaders will be the people actually running North Korea. So it's basically the same crew of people running the country with the same perceived interests and habits. So I'd say very little is likely to change in the near term.
Is there any danger, though, of a power struggle in the coming weeks and months, do you think?
That probably has already been taken care of. Of course, no one really knows outside. The Chinese probably know better than anyone outside of North Korea. But the process of shoring up support for whatever power structure there is probably took place in the last year. North Korea does this. You know, the Kim family had a habit of acting out against others, bring the regime closer when it needed to. So in the last year, North Korea sinking a South Korean ship, shelling South Korea, engaging in other provocative acts, also calling a very rare meeting of the broader party, the Communist Party of North Korea, the Korean Workers' Party, and essentially paying off the people who needed paying off in order to gain support for this succession and the sort of regency or indirect rule that probably is taking place in North Korea from this point.
Just a final question about how the international community responds. What is the most productive way forward, do you think, in trying to actually get some sort of change with the new regime?
I'd say in not repeating the mistakes of the past 2 U.S. administrations, and it looks like this one, have gone down a path of trying to get the deal of the century out of North Korea, essentially buy off the regime for its nuclear weapons program and now its nuclear weapons arsenal. The regime is happy to sell it and does so for foreign assistance, but never delivers the good. And unfortunately, as we have pursued negotiations, we've also hesitated or suppressed any effort to promote political change in North Korea, to help refugees in a serious way, to empower defectors, to seek political change, to pump more information in via dissident broadcasting. All of those things, those steps, which are focused more on helping the North Korean people lift the veil of censorship and propaganda and eventually take control of their own destiny, it would be more productive than negotiations, which I think would fail for a third time if we pursued them.
Christian, thanks very much. And as you finish that thought, let me just tell you out of Washington and the White House commenting and saying the United States